Welcome to Mythical Phylogeny Adventures. I'm your guide Jason. I have picked on the healer and how they would actually work in a fantasy world. But I think I should look at another key role, and that is the Invincible Tank. Anyone who's played a fantasy game has seen them. The heavy warrior who wields a massive shield and wears a whole blacksmith shop worth of metal that hides every aspect of their body. They are fearless as they advance on your foe. Blow after blow rains down on them, yet they are impervious to it all. Be it blade or spell, the armored warrior will not falter, never taking a step back, never buckling. They are a wall, immovable, infallible. That is the idea of the tank role in an adventure party, and that usually isn't how it goes, right? But there are a few issues applying this idea to a practical fantasy world. First, we need to discuss what a tank needs to do, and what tools they need to do it. The tank's job is to redirect and attract the attacks of foes to keep their squishier party members safe. Right away, that means they need damage reduction, so either by heavy armor or using the same by magic. Their focus is maximizing their survivability, and often do so at the cost of their offensive power. When I played World of Warcraft, I ran a paladin tank. While questing alone, I could fight 30 foes at a time easily, except for one little problem. While I was in no danger of dying, my DPS was so abysmal that foes would start respawning before I killed them all. Thus, they are dependent on their party members for damage, and that is what I did. One of my guild members had to come with me questing just to do all the damage. Finally, I could quest without it being time consuming, and they didn't have to worry about dying. Each party member has their individual role. DPS takes things down, but can't take a hit, the glass cannon. Healers prevent death and cure debuffs, and crowd control keeps foes from doing things. Yes, I am not rambling completely right here. This will be important later. So tanks need survivability, but they also need ways to get their foes' attention. I mean, I don't care how invincible your tank is, they aren't any good without the ability to get foes to attack them. A taunt. And I have a serious question for you all. What is a taunt? Seriously, what is a taunt? Is it just running up and yelling an insult? Oh, your mother was a hamster, and your father smelled of elderberries. I fought in your general direction. Would that get someone to attack you? Well, you might get a confused look, but no. To any sane person, that doesn't justify you bashing their head in. Nope. And it won't work on a foe which doesn't understand your language, like a wolf or a soldier from 1,000 miles away. No, the taunt needs to be something real. And there are two schools of magic, which I think really do fit it. And that is illusion magic and enchantment or charm magic. The first one is the more fun one. With illusion magic, you can make your allies invisible, so they can't be attacked. Or you can mess with your foe's perception to make them see only you. With enchantment magic, you can warp their perception so that they are enraged and locked in on you. The main purpose is to get your foe focused on you. Else, what are you going to do to get your foes to attack the tank? Okay, I did lie. There is another way to get your foe to not attack your DPS, and that is their real task. The tank doesn't want to take damage, they want to make sure that the others don't take damage too though. That means they just need to keep their foe from attacking. Ideally, your tank is going to need a massive amount of health to keep getting beaten and keep going. If they want to use this fighting style, it is a very masochistic fighting style to be sure. They best have a good relationship with their healer if they wish to survive. Now, I want to ask you a few things. What is it really like to tank? You get your foe punching and punching you over and over again. But what can you do to stop that? You grab their arms. This isn't a taunt, it's grappling. And for a tank, it might be a staple of their fighting. A tank should focus on martial arts, particularly joint locks, pins, and grabs. Honestly, a wrestler class might make a nice tank. Your tank can grab your foe and hold them down. Then all you got to do is make sure that your allies don't stab you while ending your foe. Of course, that won't work on bigger foes. And this brings up the issue I have with tanks. The best form of tanking is to have a dead foe, but the second is crowd control. Conjure an ice prison to entrap your foes so that they can't do anything, and now you can just walk up and stab them. And this is the issue. Why have a tank when you can just spam crowd control effects to win quick and easy? Yeah, why do you need to let your foe hurt you when you can just fully stop them? This is what adventurers should do. Focus on complete crowd control rather than sending out a damage sponge. Now your healer doesn't need to heal your tank, and you can have the tank not getting hurt so that they can apply the hurt. Now you don't need a tank, you just need spell power. Of course, you are very prone to counter spells and being silenced. This would be your second best fighting style. The best, of course, is if you are able to just go in and nuke your foes. A 1-second fight is over before a 2-second fight. Yeah, I know, real groundbreaking information there. And this means that your tank and crowd control won't be needed. So these strategies are for longer and more difficult fights. Like a boss battle. A foe who has too much health, or they have immunity to crowd control powers. And here's where having a tank does make sense. When taking down a dragon or a demon lord, a foe where you are going all out against them. But there is a major issue right away. How big is the dragon? How strong is it? If it hits you, what happens? Well, dragons are frequently seen throwing knights around and kidnapping princesses. That means that they'll need the strength to move them. So if a dragon slaps your tank, what is going to happen? Well, the tank is probably going to be sent flying. What about a giant? They pick up a tree and take a swipe at you. Are you going to keep your footing? This means that part of the survivability that a tank would need is the ability to hold their position, a way to increase their inertia. But there is a better option. Dodge. Just dodge all of its attacks. It doesn't matter how strong your foe is, if they can't touch you. So dodge tanking might be better and more effective against bigger foes. Well, not as much against area effect attacks, like a fireball. Those are hard to avoid damage with. So we finally reached the region where you will need a tank. But with such attacks, what happens to your allies? They'll get hurt. And this brings up the ultimate issue. Why do you wear armor? To protect yourself from danger and harm. And often adventurers have their own armor to protect themselves. Honestly, everyone should have some form of armor on for protection. After all, a dead adventurer isn't going to finish their quest. So, if the tank is protecting themselves using some form of magic, why don't the others use them? Why wouldn't your rogue use the same spells to keep themselves safe from attacks? Earlier, I joked about the DPS being glass cannons, but what if your DPS isn't so squishy? What happens when your DPS can take one blow after another and keep going? What happens here? Well, you won't have to worry about losing your DPS so easily. So you have iron cannons now. Much better, wouldn't you agree? So why don't they use these tactics? Think about it. If you are going into a life and death fight every other day, you want everything you can do to improve your chance of living another day. And we see this in wars in our world. You always sought a way to improve the armor of your full forces, to prevent needless deaths. But in medieval armies, not everyone wore a full suit of plate armor. Why? Well, it can be expensive. And this might be an option in a fantasy world. Could your rangers and wizards afford a full suit of armor? Well, there is a good chance that it isn't possible. But wouldn't that also be a consideration for your tank to handle? Yep, it is. So we need another option. And there is one. Fighting styles. How well can a rogue fight while buried under a ton of metal? You can't sneak about like that. So no, not all fighters can get away with the heavy armor. But what about spells? I mean that you will need magic to make taunting work, and magic to keep from being flung about. So if it is magic, couldn't others learn it? Couldn't that improve the survivability for your whole party? And yes, this should be something which should spread. Like I said earlier, everyone has their armor, and everyone should seek out ways to gain damage reduction. Yes, I know that different classes go about it in their own way. Clerics from their gods, monks from meditation, wizards, spells, and so on. But if every class seeks out their own type of armor and was to prevent damage, what good is the tank? That means that the tank would have to possess an incredible form of damage reduction and survivability to just justify their existence. But this means that you would likely not need a tank unless you're going up against a boss foe. Overall, I think that there isn't as much need for a tank as you would think. Without using magic, there is no way that they could logically complete their role in the party. Their best fighting methods would be to just avoid attacks rather than absorb damage. But that is something any class should focus on. And this is something which a rogue or monk might be better suited to than a paladin. They would need a true form of damage mitigation, but the best form is to not get struck. And what techniques are developed will eventually be adapted by the other classes, until all classes end up with it. A true tank might be a very situational member of an adventurer's party, and I don't think the tank and spank strategy would really work. Not unless your tank was a heavy golem or something akin. Thank you for watching, adventurers. Please return next time. Until then, I'll see you on the roads.